Welcome to the Red Pill Sports and Entertainment Show. I am Albert Apache, your host, and as usual, it is brought to you by Open Source Self-Defense Fitness and Grappling. So if you've been following the show, you know that we've been reviewing the Gracie Combatives system, the entire gambit, all three of the different programs they have. We started with the Gracie Combatives, the flagship program. We went into Gracie Bullyproof, and now we're going to be looking at Women Empowered. Now, at the end, I'm going to give you a grade, or my star rating out of for the entire program. But for now, let me say that the Women Empowered gets a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and it's almost a 4, but we're going to talk about why it's not quite a 4. So stick with me, and we're going to talk about what the overall grade for the entire 3 package system is. So first off, Women Empowered. So some of the things I really liked about Women Empowered was the idea that they really emphasized the survive and escape mentality. They really didn't veer off too far into like quote unquote winning the fight, right? They kept coming back to this concept of when you get a window of opportunity to escape. And so that was really cool. Some of the things I didn't like was that it was still being sold like a lot of the self-defense industry does under the scary narrative, or the scary stranger narrative, right? The first 10 lessons are pretty much their core lessons, and the vast majority of them are centered around somebody approaching you and grabbing you and trying to drag you off, or come up behind you and grab you and trying to carry you away. And while that's a realistic scenario in the sense that it does happen, it's a minority of the instances when a woman is sexually assaulted. Most of the time, statistically, we know from crime statistics that, women are generally assaulted by people that they're already familiar with, people that they know. So I really feel like they could have done a better job focusing on some of the ground techniques, because I think that that's where most, females really need a understanding, right, of how to get out of a bad situation when maybe a date decides that he's gonna force himself into the next level of intimacy, right? He wants this to happen, so he's gonna get overpowering, and he's gonna be overly aggressive and assertive, and then she needs to say okay till it starts to turn into assault, and she needs to know how to get out of that situation. So I really feel like they could have focused a little bit more on that. Now, again, it still has the same Achilles heel that Gracie Combatives has, which is, with the advent of MMA, any joker on the street, knows some of the basics of jiu-jitsu just from watching the UFC. Yeah, it's great that you can train these techniques in your garage, and yeah, it's awesome. And that's kind of how it's sold, but really it comes back to you really need better feedback. It also has that same weakness from the Bullyproof, where doing this as an at-home system for the beginner probably isn't the best idea. If you already have jiu-jitsu training and you understand a lot of the principles and concepts, and you understand how to move your body, or somebody in your household does, a son, a daughter, a husband, then this would be a more effective at-home program, because they can better explain to you how to move your body, right? What I've come to learn from training people is that a lot of people, and training them in martial arts and also training them in fitness, is that many people are not as aware of their body as you would think. When you tell somebody to hinge at the hips, for instance, and you try to explain to them, no, I just want you to bend here, just bend at the waist, don't bend your knees, like for instance doing a deadlift or something, a lot of times that they think they are, but from the outside looking in, you can clearly see that they're not hinging at the hips. You ask them to keep their back straight and they curve it over, right? They do these things because they're not as aware of their body positioning as you would think. And so this is why it's really crucial that you have somebody that has experience kind of walking you through. Now, that's not to say that having some training is better than no training, but if we're going to be honest, if you can get into one of the CTCs, their certified training centers, that's probably the best, especially with the women empowered system, because as I've understood it and as I've seen on the internet, is at times, at least in the main Gracie University or Academy in Torrance, they've offered this program basically for free while slots last, while there's space available. I don't know how many slots they offer every time they do it, but if you can get in while there's slots available, you can get this training for free, and that would actually be the best way. Then maybe the $100 investment, makes sense for the DVDs. So that brings us to my last critique, the reason why it didn't get a 4.0 for an at-home program, and that's basically because the cost. The cost, in my opinion, is excessive. $99 for what amounts to, I want to say, a total of 15 lessons. I think it's basically 15 lessons. I mean, I just think that that's a bit excessive. It basically breaks down to $11 per lesson, or $11 per technique as they count it, and that's pretty pricey. It's pricey when you consider that you're not getting live interaction from somebody. Okay, so that's where I think it gets a little bit excessive. Also, I think it's excessive because the reason why it's $11 per lesson is that if you look at the combatives program, they're only offering about 9 techniques that aren't in Gracie combatives. So 9 of the 15 techniques you cannot find in Gracie combatives, or they're not explored in detail enough in Gracie combatives. So given that only 9 of the techniques are available exclusively in women empowered, I feel that the program is a bit expensive. So with that being said, let's move on to basically the review of the 3 systems, right? Combatives, bullyproof, and women empowered as a whole. If you're buying this program as a whole, well, combatives would be coming out to about $3.30 per lesson. Bullyproof would be about $3.60 a lesson, because you're actually missing 3 of the techniques. They don't include any of the chokes. So your rear naked choke, your triangle choke, guillotine choke is not included in Gracie bullyproof. And then, like I said, with the women empowered, you're looking at about $11 a lesson. Now, I think that that's a bit pricey altogether. If you're just looking at the DVD set, you can get all 3 of the DVD sets at about $289. It works out to roughly about $5.89 per lesson. I think that's extremely high, given that you have a redundancy in the program when it comes to combatives and bullyproof. You're basically paying the $199 for what amounts to 3 DVDs from combatives to Gracie bullyproof, and that being the parent program, so that they talk to you about it, and your Gracie games, and pretty much that's it. That's what you're paying $119 for, and I think that that's a bit excessive. Moving on into women empowered, again, paying $99 basically for another 9 lessons that they don't explore in Gracie combatives, which, if we're being honest, it should be in combatives, because women are not the only ones that may be grabbed from behind. They're not the only ones that may be choked while standing. They're not the only ones that could get bear hugged from behind, right? They're not the only ones that can happen to. Those scenarios can happen to men or teenagers, males as well. So they should be included in a complete system with Gracie combatives. Now, Gracie University, or the Gracie store, does offer an elite premium package, which is all the DVD sets plus online access to the Gracie University system, right? So that you can get the most out of the product. That being said, that's still pricey, because it's $429 for that. It's not including tax. What that breaks down to is roughly about $8.74 per month, or per lesson. If you were to find a jiu-jitsu academy, you could find a jiu-jitsu academy probably close to you, attend about 3 times a week for a month, and that would roughly be about $117, just over $117, almost $118. That's pretty reasonable, and pretty in line with what you can find for most jiu-jitsu academies, most jiu-jitsu schools. You can find that price to train. That's basically 3.5 months, plus you get the invaluable experience of actually rolling with a live person that understands the techniques. The only drawback, of course, is that they might not be covering these specific techniques. However, that being said, understanding how the jiu-jitsu community works, once you start to make friends there, if you wanted to go over these different styles of self-defense concepts, there's a lot of times you can do those things during open mat or after class. So all in all, the problem with the entire Gracie combative system is not that the techniques are not good. It's not that the teaching style is not good. All in all, it's overpriced, and that's what brings down the overall rating of the system as a whole. While it's probably the best at-home system that I've ever watched for any kind of martial arts training, because of the details that they cover, okay, it's still overpriced. And not overpriced by a little bit, it's overpriced by a lot. They really could combine all 3 of the programs, right? The combatives, the bully-proof, the women empowered. They could combine that all into a single DVD collection, right? Basically adding 3 DVDs from women empowered, adding the 3 DVDs that you would need from Gracie Bullyproof to augment combatives for children, and they could offer it at a much lower price than $288.70. They should be probably offering it at right around $200, and then maybe with online access $300. Then you're getting a real deal. You're starting to get a little bit better deal if you have complete access and forever access to the online coaching. Then you're getting a better deal. But at $428 for the online package, that you get the online access as well as the DVDs, and $288 for just the DVDs, I feel like the program as a whole is overpriced. So that brings us to, what's the rating? Well, I'd have to say that overall I would rate the complete 3 package system as a 3.0 out of 5 stars. And again, the only reason why it's not higher is because of price. All right, guys, let's get into some of the fun stuff now. So we're going to start off this fun topic with a red pill moment. So red pill alert, guys. Now, we're going to get into this red pill alert by playing a little game called Guess That Dallas Cowboys Head Coach. Let's get into it. So first we have Coach A, who has an overall record of 34-30 with a 53% winning percentage and a playoff record of 0-2. Next, we have Coach B that has an overall record of 67-53 with a winning percentage of 56% and a playoff record of 1-3. And then lastly, we have Coach C with an overall record of 35-22 with a 61% winning percentage and a playoff record of 1-1. So who could this dismal Coach A be for the Dallas Cowboys with 0 playoff wins and a 53% winning percentage? Oh, well, it'd be none other than Bill Parcells, who has no playoff wins as the Dallas Cowboy head coach and actually has one losing season of the 4 years that he coached in Dallas, meaning he has a 25% losing record for the Dallas Cowboys. I find this very interesting given that Bill Parcells is routinely referenced when people talk about Jerry Jones needing to bring in a quote-unquote real football coach. I just find it really interesting that he seems to be the worst of these 3 coaches we're looking at. Now, before we go on to Coach B, let's take a look at Coach C. Who could this awesome offensive mind be? Well, it's no other than Wade Phillips. Again, I find it interesting that when the talking heads talk about the different coaching staffs that have gone through Dallas, one of the most underrated coaches happens to be Wade Phillips. He has a 61% winning percentage with the Dallas Cowboys and only had one losing season, or what you can consider a losing season, with the Dallas Cowboys. That would have been when he was fired, when he was going 1-6 at the time. I find this very interesting that Wade Phillips seems to be completely dismissed by the talking heads when he had a much, much better winning percentage than Bill Parcells. Which brings us to Coach B with an overall record of 67-53 and a 56% winning percentage and 1 playoff win. This would be Jason Garrett. Now, the reason why this is a red pill moment, people, is because over the years, I have sat back and listened to all the talking heads, all the conventional wisdom is what a bad head coach and what a bad offensive mind Jason Garrett is. However, when you actually look at the data and you look at the numbers, that's not what's borne out. What's borne out is that Jason Garrett owns 3 of the 400 plus scoring seasons of head coaches since the Cowboys have won the Super Bowl. The other 2 going to Phillips and Parcells. You also see that he has helped to lead the Cowboys to score over 300 points almost his entire career as the Dallas Cowboy head coach, the only exception being the 2015 season. And that was the season that Romo went down and they played musical chairs at quarterback and even experimented with Matt Castle. The reason why I'm bringing this up is that Troy Aikman recently said that the entire organization is dysfunctional. I would say he's correct. However, the red pill part is that he's correct for a reason he doesn't understand. He's correct because the problem is for all the talk, for all the people saying that Jerry does his own thing, that Jerry Jones, is a maverick. For all of that talk, the reality is what you see as you look through the coaches that have been dismissed by Jerry Jones are winning records with the one exception of Dave Campo. Dave Campo is the only the only head coach of the Dallas Cowboys since the Super Bowl winning era that has a losing record. Every other coach has a winning record. Jason Garrett also only has one losing season to his name. And again, that's the 2015 season. Troy Aikman is right that there is dysfunction in this organization. And the dysfunction is that Jerry Jones too often hears the whispers. He listens to the whispers that go on in the little talking head TV shows and talking head radio shows around the league, and he makes decisions based on whispers, other people's opinions about the organization. Now, we can even see this with the Dez Bryant release. While Dez has had his issues, what we're starting to see now, what's becoming very apparent in these last 3 seasons, is that Dak Prescott is the issue with the passing game. Not Dez Bryant. Dez Bryant was not the issue. It's been Dak Prescott. Last night we saw a Dallas Cowboy team basically through the sheer will offensively of Ezekiel Elliott and an amazing defensive effort win against the Philadelphia Eagles. What we saw was Dak continuously miss wide open receivers. There was one play in particularly in the third quarter. Michael Gallup was in the slot. He came across the formation. Dak was already reading the field to the left. He should have read the safety, and he should have read the cornerback as well as the linebackers, because they all let Michael Gallup cut through the middle of the defense, run that inside post, and there was nobody there. Had Dak thrown him open, in other words, thrown the ball where he was going to be, that would have been an easy touchdown. But Dak doesn't throw guys open. Dak has to have you either extremely open or he forces the ball. Last night we witnessed Ezekiel Elliott, by his sheer will of force, dominate and will his team to a victory. I have not seen that from a running back since Barry Sanders. Now, why am I bringing all of this up? Because we are also seeing this with another NFL head coach, Jon Gruden, Chucky. Chucky is being dismissed right now by all of the talking heads as if he is an idiot or a moron. I have to believe with the major trades that he's made, with the major moves that he's made, that he had to have told the ownership what his vision was. And I think the ownership was looking for somebody to actually implement and have the stones, the cojones, the nuts, the balls to implement this game plan, which is they're going to completely revamp. They're going to justify leaving LA, Oakland, California, just leaving all of that ridiculousness behind to go to Las Vegas by putting a horrible product on the field in the short term, dropping attendance, so that when they leave, there's no question about why they left, and starting to retool with a young, fast, offensively explosive team. The Raiders are going to mirror Sin City. They are going to be a high risk, high reward, high caliber offense. They're going to gamble. They're going to let that ball fly. And because of this, I think the clock is ticking on Derek Carr. I think if Derek Carr either doesn't show significant improvement or doesn't start to realize it himself, he needs to start thinking about his future without the Raiders and not being in the silver and black. I think that Gruden's either going to trade him for a big, strong-armed quarterback, or he's going to trade him to get even more picks, and he's going to be looking to fill that quarterback stable with a lot of young, big-armed quarterbacks coming into the league. This offense is going to be a vertical attacking offense. And now more than ever with the rule set, it favors this style of play. If you have a quarterback that is willing to gamble, that is willing to take risks, that's willing to throw guys open, that can have amnesia and forget the last play, forget the last pick, and go back out there and start slinging it. A Brett Favre-esque, an Aaron Rodgers-esque type of quarterback. Okay, you can put an exciting product on the field. And I think that's what the Raiders organization overall is looking to do. Okay, guys, so that brings us up to what's going on in the college football playoff. Well, nothing's really changed. Everything's pretty much stayed the same. That being said, Alabama is starting to play a tougher part of their schedule. And while they are winning, the scoring is going down significantly. And now you hear the SEC fanboys already starting to make the excuses should Georgia defeat Alabama. They're talking about how you could leave out Notre Dame or Michigan even if both of those teams win out. It's utterly ridiculous. And again, this is the exact reason why the NCAA needs to step in, clean it up, and institute an actual, real, justified college football playoff. The reality is, if you can't win your division, you have no business in a playoff. If you win or you lose, late in the season, hey, that's a playoff game. You're out of here. All right, guys. Let's move on to UFC Fight Night. So first, let me say how utterly impressed I was with Donald "Cowboy" Cerrone's performance against Mike Perry. I was a little worried that, not out of emotion, because we saw that his emotions were good, he wasn't, in that vindictive state of mind, but I was worried that his toughness, that his maturity level wasn't quite where it needed to be, and that he would get baited into a standing and trading kickboxing or boxing match with Mike Perry. I was excitedly, surprisingly, and happily surprised to see that Cowboy had in fact realized that he needed to get this fight to the ground. That being said, Cowboy wasn't the one who initiated the ground fight. I was actually pretty surprised that Mike Perry decided to take the fight to the ground. You saw how much more dominant Cerrone was on the ground to Mike Perry. I mean, the submission game, the grappling game, the wrestling game, the jiu-jitsu game was light years ahead of what Mike Perry was doing on the ground. So far ahead of him. I'm not saying one move ahead. He was like 3 or 4 moves ahead of what Mike Perry was doing on the ground. It was amazing. It was impressive. I am super happy to see that Cowboy has matured in his fighting through his IQ of what he wants to do. If he can maintain this, I think he does have a shot to get into title contention at 155 if he actually follows through and chooses to move back down to 155. I actually think that's a much better weight class for him. He seems to be able to deal with the flurries and absorb more damage at that weight class than the 170 weight class. I think he was a better fighter at 155. I think he can make it there. I think he can make a run at the title at 155. Next, what can we say about the main event? The Korean Zombie versus Yair Rodriguez. What a great fight. This was an awesome fight. Hats off to both competitors. Even though the Zombie got KO'd at the very end, it was a great match. He put forth an amazing effort. Now, I'm on the other side of the fence as to a lot of people who had the scorecard up until that point favoring the Korean Zombie. I really had it 3 rounds to 2 for Yair. But I would not have been surprised had the decision gone either way. But what can you say about Yair? his striking. He showed some very, very good boxing and close distance fighting. I mean, even without a lot of the movement, we found out at the end of the fight that he had hurt his foot, and that was probably why he wasn't moving as much. But even without his big, flashy, rounding movements, he was able to move in very tight spots, be very precise and very concise with his movements, so that he was very efficient as a striker. I thought it was amazingly telling about his maturity that even in the early on in the fight, when he knew he wasn't hurt, before he got hurt, he was being very judicious with his explosiveness. He wasn't looking to explode every 10 seconds. He was picking his spots to explode. This was an amazing fight. You could see that he had worked on that elbow. That was not a fluke. Anybody who says that's a fluke does not understand what they saw. You really need to re-watch that fight if you think that that elbow was a fluke. You can see in the replay that he actually looks over his right shoulder, back and up over that right shoulder as he throws the elbow, so that he can see if he can make it, if it's gonna hit the target. Amazing, amazing, exciting fight. Amazing fight by Yair. Amazing knockout. That should definitely catapult him into the top 10. That fight is a candidate for Fight of the Year in the UFC. It's a candidate for KO of the Year. Really, hats off. This was an amazing fight. Hope you guys got to see it. If you didn't, invest in the UFC Fight Pass and check it out. It was a great fight, guys. Okay, guys, that's it for this week's show. Thank you so much for listening. Please leave your comments down below. Now, next week, we're going to get into a long talk, and we're going to dominate probably most of the show talking about bullying, and specifically bullying amongst boys. And we're going to talk about why I believe it's super important that you have your sons involved in combat sports, or at least physical contact where you're having impact sports for young boys, why it's important. This has been the Red Pill Sports Show. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, be practical, be purposeful, get fit with a purpose.